Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys. What's with the camera? Hang on. The camera's all blurry. I just got to clean the camera. Okay. That should be it. Okay.
You can get 8% off your premium every year with Honey Insurance. Get a quote in just 3 minutes.
Have we been kidnapped?
They call it recruited.
Who's that?
The guest was somebody whose family Okay, guys, so this episode is going to be a little different. I started watching a podcast, right? And it was of a young man named Nathan Reynolds. I believe he was on a podcast called The Confessionals. And I was 4
Hey, Diane, good to see you.
I got this video sent to me from a friend, right? And this friend does a lot of different studies and a lot of different watchings on Nephilim. So on this podcast, the guest was somebody whose family is said to be descendants of the Nephilim. Okay, so when I first got it, I was like, "Oh, I'll watch it." But 4 minutes in, when he said that they were Luciferians, but then he went and named Lucifer's real name, which is Hallel. His Hebrew name is Hallel. Lucifer is what we call him in English. But when he said, "Yeah, the Luciferians, they worship Hallel," I said, "Oh shoot, I gotta watch it on here live with y'all." Okay, I gotta watch it on here live with y'all. We're gonna watch it together. This is my first time seeing it. This is also your first time seeing it. So let's just check it out.
You come from a family
Wow.
that people would describe it as Illuminati family.
Mhm.
Is that how you would describe it?
That's not how I would
Wow.
describe it in the same way. I'll be honest. It's I think it's just a popular catchphrase that a lot of people are borrowing into. No, I come from a family that
So if this one doesn't work out, I'll play the link you just done. I don't know what this one's going to be like. I never watch them right through when I start watching them, when I check them out.
they believe they are descendants of the old gods. That's the best way to say it. That they believe that they are carriers of a seed line that gives them the divine right to rule. And that is what gives them justification spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, scientifically to dominate the lesser species known as humans. Humans literally means a lesser species of man. And they do not believe they are a human in the same way. They believe they are something other than. And that's descendants of this hierarchical ruling species that is from the celestial realm that descended in the days of Jared and came down and procreated with the daughters of men, and that they still trace their seed line back to Gilgamesh, till Nimrod. And so this is what the dynastic families believe they have, is a superiority in their genetics on one side and the ability to commune with the divine. And so their children are progenitors of these, some might call them abreactions, mutations, these skills, psychic abilities, that kind of stuff, all variants of it. And so they raise up their children in this path with which involves a tremendous amount of shattering of the soul and the identity, so that there's compartmentalization within, and it allows them the ability to train their child up in a way that makes them conducive towards the family. I call them the family. That's what I call them. You know, it's a better word for mafia than anything else. But no, we didn't call ourselves, like my family wouldn't ever call themselves Illuminists.
Yeah.
Right? They're Luciferian. That's for certain. They worship Hallel and Shahar, as he's really known, but different reasons than what people are ascribed to, you know.
Interesting. All right, so I want you to start from the beginning of what your childhood was like and just walk us through this. But before you do, you just said something that I got to ask you before I forget. What they believe, do you believe is true in the sense of them being able to trace back their lineage to the fallen?
Some of them, yes. I believe they absolutely can.
Do you think that's in your blood?
Hey, Bas, good to see you, mate.
I believe it was, yeah. I believe it is.
Yeah.
I believe there's no way to physiologically necessarily, my blood's been augmented a lot over the years. I volunteered for a lot of stuff and said yes to everything that they could ever give me that would make me better than what I was. I was on a desperate quest for relief. And so I volunteered for all kinds of stuff, and I volunteered for stuff that was transhuman in its nature.
Really?
And it augmented me quickly, you know, and that was brutal, because then there's this, I lived a lot longer than I expected. Let me just put it that way. I did not think I would ever see 18. Never even comprehended the idea that I would ever know a family that wasn't this other thing, where the powers of control and access were given through the abuse of children. That's what I knew was normal. And I knew that people were corrupt and monsters and were willing to devour each other to rise to the top. I understood what wolves were when they ran the world. And so
Bas, I watch a couple of this guy's stuff, but not much of it. But it looks like it's going to be interesting, doesn't it?
it was very hard for me to get to a place where I could believe that I could be redeemed, because I had witnessed enough of things in the families that make it seem like I am irredeemable forever. And it took me, there was one book that made a massive difference in that, which was called The Gospel to Every Creature. And I believe it's written by John Darnell. It is very hard to find. I have a copy, but it's been scrubbed. And it's the good news to Nephilim, vampires, and transhumans, you know, and it helped me to see that maybe I wasn't anathema, that maybe just because I have this seed line in me, that maybe just because I'm a progenitor of the offspring of the fallen, that it doesn't mean that I'm not able to be redeemed. Because no matter what, by blood or by belief, I believe that we have a Messiah that overcame and we can overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the words of our testimony, not living our lives in face with death. And it was that powerful encounter with the Almighty, with the true judge of all the earth, who I can make an appeal to, who can give me a new bloodline, you know, and that's what he offers to everyone. And so I do believe that's available to those that come from these families.
That's wild.
You hear this, man? This is somebody who believes he is a descendant of a Nephilim, yet he's saying Yeshua redeemed him. My Lord.
I didn't. Last year in the Christmas season, I took the last 2 weeks of the year off, and I had other people host the show. And my friend Joel did an episode that he called Good Nephilim. And he kind of goes into this idea of Nephilim being able to be redeemed.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a bad one.
It's a concept that I feel like has not been tapped into a whole lot. And he did on my show for I think the first time. And since then he's kind of uncovered more information to back up his claims. But having, you know, a real life Nephilim here, no, I was kidding. But it's just it kind of goes into that concept, you know. And so that's why I asked you, because I was like, hold on, like that's pretty wild. Like, you know, to be like, have I ever encountered somebody who comes from that bloodline? Maybe. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, but how many times do you come across somebody that does come from that bloodline and acknowledges it, knows it? You know, that's another thing. And so that's why I wanted to ask you that. So you kind of hit on the childhood stuff right there in that kind of description. Was it something that came from complete childhood, where it's like from your earliest memories, it's just been kind of manipulated and jacked up? And what was that like for you growing up?
Well, my family set up a base of operations. They're from the East Coast, the Reynolds family on one side. My mother's family, just for clarity, I've never exposed a lot of the side of things that were going on with, let me say it another way. The Reynolds family on my father's side, they're all from the East Coast out here, and they're a dynastic family. You know, like my great-grandfather, a man named Don Potter Reynolds, was the architect, the head of engineering for the president, as the president of the American Society of Civil Engineering back in the 80s. And he's the one who put the new torch in the Luciferian hand of the Statue of Liberty of Columbia.
Wow.
And so he's a master Mason Luciferian in that way. And he was so much of the shot caller for the family at that time, especially when I came into being. And but my dad left that thing and moved out to the Southwest and started a different empire. And so a lot of how it works in the families is you got two main approaches. If you've got unlimited access to wealth, power, like really, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about power, like unlimited raw power, where a phone call, the phone book is far more powerful than the bank account because it's who you know can open doors to power anywhere else in the entire world. And that's where everything was. So you can leave with nothing, but then you can go build. And if you need the phone book, there's a price to be paid. And the price to be paid is generally one of your children. This is like the reality accident.
Wow.
It seems bizarre to some, but a child is generally a chosen child out of the family is given over as an offering to the family. And they're the ones who's going to go through this left-hand path. They're going to experience the desecration of their soul, their identity, and they're going to become an agent for the family. That is owned completely. And there's like a legal trust that is given over to it. There's a board of directors that sits over it. Like these are real legal confines for how the wealth is distributed out there. So in order to build your wealth, you've got to be able to go prove yourself. And that's what he ended up doing out in the Southwest. He moved to Arizona, an area called Flagstaff, Arizona. And where I was born, that is a place.
I knew they had an earthquake, but I didn't realize it was an 8-point earthquake. Wow, that's a big one.
It's a high place.
And wasn't there a tsunami warning with it?
It's Mount Humphreys. It's a volcanic peaks that sit there. And the top of it is where the Hopi Indian and a lot of people had gathered forever to commune with the fallen. They believed that the sons of the sky would come down every season at the winter solstice, and they would abide from the winter solstice to the summer solstice there. And so this was a place where they would give their daughters over to them. This is Hopi mythology, like 101, you know, and they would make these Kachina dolls, which were an effigy of the what I would say is a watcher angel that would come, and the daughter would be given to him, and she would place that over her bed throughout her life, you know, and that's her familiar spirit, right? That's where I was born into. And the people that still practice that old religion, that's the way I refer to it, they still do this. And they still take their children up there to give them over to them on these high days. And so I was born into that, and I was born through that seed line and into that ritual magic world. And but my mother's side are extreme Catholics and Jesuits through and through. And so
just as bad.
Father ran a different operation in Southern California, which was much more based on the child exploitation side of the equation. And he operated out of Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Lake Havasu, for those of you that are unfamiliar, sits in the absolute desert border of Arizona and California, and it has the Colorado River that's been dammed up, and they created an artificial lake there. And it was a secret military base back in World War II that was called Site 6. And it was a stopover point crossing the desert for soldiers going there. And they would made it into a rest and recuperation area. And so it was a party city from its foundation. It had a lot of underground structures that were built into it as a refueling point. And in the 1960s, a guy named Robert P. McCulloch bought it. And he bought it, and he also purchased the London Bridge that crossed the River Thames. And he had it shipped over here stone by stone. And while they were doing that, they excavated 80 bodies that were entombed inside it in a practice that's called annulment, where you would sacrifice a person and bury them alive in the walls of the foundation. And so there's all these chambers in this facility of the London Bridge where they would do torture and all kinds of ritual stuff. But this is why the sing-song nursery rhyme, the London Bridge is falling down, falling down. That's a nursery rhyme to talk about how you have to give your children over to the government so you can hold up the London Bridge. And they would literally take their children. This is in the history book of the museum at Lake Havasu City. You can see these bodies of these children that were sacrificed inside the walls of that space.
Wow.
So he bought that as a charged object. He bought that as a portal mechanism. And they built in Lake Havasu City with another designer from the Disneyland. And they literally built a pleasure island.
With Buddy Pet Insurance, you can get up to 90% of your eligible vet bills back. Buy now and get your first month free.
The winter getaway is calling, and it's time to go grand. In just
Running empty's a bit of a pain. At Origin, we're helping you keep your LP.
That's what it was facilitated for. And they designed it so that it would be a retirement community that would facilitate the exploitation of children. And that's exclusively what that city was founded and built for. And so the original founders of that operated out of Knights of Columbus predominantly as a wing of the Jesuits. And that's the business down there. It's an industry to cover up child. You got a bunch of old men running around with little boys, and everybody thinks they're grandchildren and nephews and nieces and all that rest. And so all along that area down there is where I would be taken from my earliest days and shattered, abused, traumatized, systemically so. But it's for behavioral modification purposes. That's the end goal of the abuse. is to shatter your willingness to resist and to break your will. Once
Yeah.
they own you and you
Hey, Shawnee, good to see you.
woefully convinced you can never get out,
Sorry, babe.
you give in. And that's what happened. I became the person who I was died, you know, and the person they wanted me to become was what was born out of that disgusting Phoenix ashes, you know.
Wow. How long does that process take? I mean, was this like just a few years of your childhood, or was this like a constant thing throughout your teen years, or what?
I mean, every individual is different. How long does it take to break a dog?
Mm.
That was the approach they took with me. You know, you find out everybody has different talents and giftings and capabilities and capacities. And so in the beginning phase, a lot of it is you're just raising them up a little more normally. There's a lot of early trauma stuff that's hard to articulate and can be messy with memory. But as I got older, like 5 and 6 years old, man, it became very apparent that I had a desire for justice. That was like the soul deepest desire that I had, you know, was I wanted people to know freedom, because I had been so deprived of it from day one. And there's this practice of switching mothers. You'll have a cult mother.
It's actually raining, Vas. We had some really bad storms over the weekend, though.
And then they have your regular mom, and then they create this trauma bonding so that you'll bond with anybody that they want you to do. And this happens by taking you away from your mom and your dad constantly and giving you new mom and dad, new uncles, new aunts, right? And so you're living in this constant state of destabilization. And so it's as that destabilization happens and that patterning is built up, that's when a lot of the programming comes in to stabilize these new personalities and these new pursuits and endeavors. But I had this zealousness to see injustice stopped, and they preyed on that. And so they gave me opportunities to fight back against these perverts who are abusing children, and they would build up in me this rage, this need for vengeance, and then they would let me release that on somebody. And in the beginning, it was people I knew were bad guys I'd seen abuse children, and I would slice their throats up, man. I would tear them to freaking ribbons.
Wow.
And I loved it, because I finally felt like I could stop something that I knew was evil. And I thought this was the way to stop all these monsters in the world. I just wanted to hunt monsters in the night. I just wanted to go down in the tunnels and hunt. And that's what they kind of created in me, this just freak of a need to hunt. And then they would bury that away, and you go back to normal life. And you go back to Christian school, and you go back to regular life, and your parents act like it's just normal, you know, but they're like, you got to have cover stories for why your child's all beat up and bruised and your space is smashed. And like, I've had multiple reconstructive plastic surgeries from fights, you know, like fighting for my stinking life. You got to have cover stories. So we would move around constantly. My parents would move us around sometimes every 6 months or not. But once you have a friend or a teacher or somebody who notices, starts asking questions, or you start bonding with somebody that's outside the cult, they're not going to tolerate that. And so we would move all the time. And now my sisters on the other side, they weren't roped into this thing. I was in a male cult. This is the Brotherhood of the Snake down in the Cavasu. But this is, my sisters weren't caught up in the same thing, but they were caught up by the family as a whole. And so this carried on, and we moved into this place called Shola Pinetop Lakeside, Arizona. And this is where an area, they would move to these specific high places where the veil is really thin. There's a very famous story
we didn't get
about
major flooding.
who had an alien encounter out there, Snowflake, Arizona. And this is an area where I was right on the Apache reservation, White Mountain Apache Reservation. It was 100 yards from
We've had a pretty cold winter, though, Vas.
door, and they would go out into the Apache reservation to these specific high places and do these rituals and this ritual magic. And a lot of that involved. That was when it was the worst to me, because I was old enough to understand how vile what was happening, you know, in ritual magic. And at the same time, I was the most readily influenced by the family side of the equation. I thought the family and the military was the way out. And I hated this occult side of it, because I saw men become monsters physically in front of my eyes. Other things come out of people's mouths. Other things come through their eyes. Like I witnessed enough transfiguration to know that this stuff is 100% stalking in the darkness. And I don't want that to rule me forever, you know, but it was hard to not resist, you know, you're in it.
Well, so, all right, seeing things like that, like you say, all right, so you said you saw men become monsters. Is that metaphorically or literally?
Good question.
I've seen men do nasty things like an animal, but then I've seen men become not people.
Like literally
not
change.
people. Yeah.
Okay.
And there is like lycanthropy, and there's these understandings of what the watchers are capable of doing. that most people are just woefully ignorant of. And that's why they're perishing. It's because they lack a basic understanding of history. And one of the predominant understandings of what a watcher, specific class of celestial beings, is capable of is augmenting itself. They can shapeshift. That is by their nature. They're literally called metaschizmazotoi in the Greek in the New Testament. And it's because he says it's marvel not, because Hasatan you could say like transforms himself. That's a good word for it. But he shapeshifts himself into an angel of light. And his messengers, his apostles, disciples, they do the same thing. And he's like, this is because they are capable of becoming anything they want to be in order to deceive on one side of the equation. And that's what they'll do. And so when people start engaging in these necromantic rituals and other stuff, and they start to seek the embodiment of these celestial ones, they can get these things on them and in them, and they can't contain them. And some of these guys who are messing with this stuff, who don't come from the bloodline, are incapable of cohabitating like a parasite, and they feed off of each other and they can't handle it. And so that's why families are recruited from these bloodlines, and children are recruited out, even if they don't know anything about it. Like you said, the vast majority of people who come from these bloodlines, there's a lot of muddying of the waters. There's a lot of purity that's been changed. There's a lot of half-breeds, and there's a lot of quarter breeds, right? There's a lot of people that don't know this stuff, and they start to get into lesser magic. And all of a sudden it's like the doors of everybody open to them. But that's why. It's because they can host these things better. Whereas those that don't, they get taken over by this stuff, and they can't change back. They can't return, in a sense. Like, people become completely possessed and are incapable of expelling the darkness after that. And who do you turn to? You're like, you're going to go to the Catholic guy who's all into the same thing that you're into, you know? Or like, most people don't understand what a real deliverance is required for somebody that has gone down this far down, where they are consuming people. Like, that's a deep, devastating psychological, spiritual shock, physical, your liver, like the health. This is why I'm huge into health, because I physically had to try to find ways to help people who have done all of these things. Like, the consumption of human blood does horrific things to the human body, you know, and this is a major practice within this. These families do drink blood. That's why we have these vampire class of people. It's not some kind of myth. People consume blood in order to live, extend their life force. Like, this is a normal thing. You've got billionaires today who admitted on Joe Rogan podcast and other places where they're like, yeah, I use the blood of my son and all that. But like, you don't understand, this is a religion, you know, and this is a highly effective means of augmenting yourself. And so these watchers will give people this power. Their priest class will dispense that to people who want to go into, you know, like what I come from down there in the Apache reservation was the people that slip between realms and become animals, you know. And it's
you are hitting things that are
Vash, you're right. This guy's fascinating, isn't he?
confirming so many things that, like, I speak hypothetically about, almost in the sense that, like, I believe but I can't prove, kind of thing. But like, for instance, years ago I had a guy on the show, and he didn't say it on the show, so I usually don't say his name, because some people know who I'm talking about, some people don't. But because he didn't say it on the show, I don't know why he didn't say it on the show. But he said that he was a former, I guess, I forget, like, Satanist or whatever. Like, he came from a deep line of this stuff, and he said at one point, he says at one point people have to make a decision whether they're going to go the vampire route or the werewolf route. And he said that he was told by somebody who went the werewolf route that he should go vampire, because doing werewolf is like the most painful thing you'll ever experience in your entire life.
By the way, guys, if you don't know, when he's saying the watchers,
that's interesting. When they shapeshift, they do it in pain. Wow, that's a detail you don't make up.
He's talking about fallen angels. Okay.
I don't know. I can't say factually how true that is or not, but you're saying a lot of similar things, and now you're saying that there's traversing realms involved with this. So are you saying that there are people who are traversing realms because of their ability to change into these things, or are those two separate categories, or sometimes the same?
I would say it like this: the reason that there's these First Nation people have preserved these priest class, right, just all across the world. This isn't just like localized to white European people. There are people here who practice this type of same old religion, and they call them skinwalkers. That's a name for them. right? But these witches and warlocks that practice these things, they go and rob graves and they take the infants' bones out and they grind them into powders, and they use that as poisons, like that. So the Jesuits was this like massive assassination team training group that was operating there that started training me. Well, then it was like you needed to learn this spiritual side of assassination and hunting and stalking. And that's where the skinwalkers and the Navajo and the Dene are like they have a different priest class that does that. And so that's what I got put out there for, because they do stuff like slipping between realms. We call them shadow walkers in the industry. Like these are guys that have this means to go between spaces. And so where you can't hear them, you can't see them, you can't detect them. They're not on thermal, but there's certain types of ways that you can detect them. So it's like you have to get kind of raised up into these arts. And these are like, this is why we call it like, this is to me the realm of Azazel. I'm just convinced that this is all Azazel's kingdom in that realm and that side of it. And people are just branching off of his tree of knowledge of good and evil side.
Notice you said Azazel, or some people may call him Azazel. It's a fallen angel. If you ever read the book of Enoch, it talks about Azazel a lot.
Save $150 with L-Gas. Local, safe and reliable LPG delivery Australia-wide.
If you were born before 1979, may I ask you something? Have you ever felt like no matter?
No.
This is crazy.
And he's ultimately the one that was teaching men these ways of war in that sense of it. But like,
hey Phil, good to see you, mate.
Man, they cursed him with lycanthropy. Daniel warns him, hey, don't go down that road. You got a dream from the Most High, don't do it. And he did it anyway. He said the Watchers are going to curse you. That's literally what they did, man. They cursed him and made him a beast. They took him down the lycanthropy road because that's what they do, man. His hair grew out, his nails grew out. Like he became a different thing that if you and I spotted it on camera, we would say it's a cryptid. We would call these things cryptids because we don't have a proper working knowledge of history and understanding why people call these things these names. But the vampire side of the equation, they tend to be much more human masquerading. Whereas you get much more feral production when people start to take this other route of becoming a beast. That's kind of the options that they give people in that world. But I believe a lot of the guys that you see out there or who are experiencing these things, they're loose assets for families. Like these are guard dogs on estates. Like that's literally, there was a training program I had to go to when I was 9 years old, and we'd go up to this farm in Michigan that was in the family, my dad's cousin, and they train all of these police, military, law enforcement, and VIP protection dogs. But then they have other cages that are man-sized cages for other stuff because that gets brought in by the families, and it's like some of these are people that are just beasts, like physically people that are like not like the rest of us, strength-wise, speed-wise, power-wise, intelligence-wise. And then others of them are just unrecognizable as anything related to man. And so
is that their ability, the strength, intelligence, is that something that is brought on through ritual, or is it brought on through like medical injections? I've heard stories of military injecting people with things and they essentially become a super soldier. Is it that kind of stuff or a combination or what?
I think it's just both. It depends on who's got high tech and who's got the old tech. The old tech is generally superior. The new tech has side effects. When people are getting injections and are using recombinant DNA to start augmenting stuff, there's other variables that are unpredictable. Whereas if you just use a different spirit, you can predict what it's going to be. That's like when a skinwalker kills, that's what you have to go through, man. I'm 9 years old and I have to stink and kill somebody with my hands, a friend, a person that I love, because my family was not somebody I loved. And so part of in order to be inhabited by these spirits that will shapeshift you and allow you to become a different creature, you're going to kill somebody that you love. And you're going to kill them with your bare hands. You're going to breathe in their life as they die. And it's when you do that this stuff comes on you. And that's the stuff that makes you convinced you can never be redeemed.
I believe it. So all right, there's so much to unpack. I'm trying to collect my thoughts. let's just go with the assassin route. You were a kid being trained to do that. When you were doing it, did you have to transform? Was that part of the process for you, or did you ever have to never go down that route?
I wasn't like, I didn't go that route. My route was being able to get by anything. Like, you got to be able to invade anything and be able to familiarize yourself and be understanding of how to navigate and get past people's weaknesses or things' weaknesses. Like, you want to train how to do infiltration and exfiltration with targets, hardened targets. You're going to have to learn how to get by guard dogs, physical guard dogs, wolf kind, you know, and then you're going to have to learn how to get by stuff that's like, they have a warlock that sits in this estate and they do ritual magic to do all these spells and incantations. You need to know how to get through that. So there's like, you get training by getting exposed to all these different variables so that you can be able to pierce through no matter what it is and eliminate somebody or plant something. It wasn't always just like assassination. That was an aspect of it, but a lot of it is counter espionage and espionage. You're setting people up, right? Or you're trying to extract something. Like, there's this project we'll have to get into more. It's called the Jason Project, which is a secret scientific military group that's now more publicly known. It's a consulting group for the smartest people in the entire world, but they had children. And so they started this junior Jason program where they're like, you know, we should all breed together, you know, and have these really super high intelligent children. Well, then they could be great spies. And so that's where you get into espionage as a major tacit of this. That is, they get interlocked so heavily, and you start to figure out that the vast majority of the people behind the scenes are not just connected to these religious orders, they're connected to the government. And these are, a lot of them are State Department employees. And this is how the United States military and government regulates and controls assets out of containment. People that are not doing what they're supposed to, that have information they shouldn't have, and they need to be eliminated, or you need to extract a piece of information from them. And so that's what really launched me into that realm, was right then in those mountains of the White Mountains is what they're called. But that was when I chose more of, I don't want anything. I want to not be in this cult side. It's not like that was respected, but it was acknowledged. And I got opportunities to do the side of it that I thought was high speed and low drag and looked way more freeing, which was the modern American soldier. I wanted that route. But you're designed to basically always be a spy. And then you're going to feed back the family what you want. And if you're going to be put in a position, we'll open the doors for you. And that's where all of that really was birthed out of, was there in the White Mountains. And then once that decision was made, my great grandfather was brought back to our house in Colorado. He was located there, and my father signed me over to him. He got parental rights. He got bedtime rights with me at night.
That's sick.
For a few years, until he was too sick to do anything about it. And my dad got access to the trust fund. And that was when everything went from like surface level, poor, middle class American to like planes, new cars, plane, new car, houses, bed and breakfasts. Like my family became wealthy. And I got thrown from freak show level werewolf Psychoville down in Arizona into the big city of Colorado Springs, which was military gods. You know, like military, it is the capital of the New World Order. Denver, the Front Range of Colorado, is 100% the place where the capital has been built and the infrastructure was laid. And so I got put into the military.
Like Denver Airport, guys.
Side of the projects there when I was a young teen. And that's where NORAD Space Command and all this underground facility from the United States Air Force Academy. And that's where I went into the military side of the equation. And that's where I stayed for quite a few years.
That's wild. I had a guy on the show a while ago. I don't want to rehash the story. I don't even remember what episode it was called or what I called it. I think it was a member show, but he was messing with something in his apartment, and somebody called in terroristic threats on him, and he had like all this like powder and stuff. Like he wasn't making bomb. I don't think he was making bombs, but like, anyways, the SWAT team came and raided his home or his apartment, and his brother called me. He's like, dude, why is the SWAT team at your apartment right now? And he's at work. And so he just panicked and he fled. And he this is in Colorado. He fled into the woods, and this is where the story from the show came up, because he's out in the woods and all of a sudden he's being hunted by translucent people shooting at him. And he said this lasted the entire night until he wound up getting to like a safe zone where it just kind of stopped, and he wound up turning himself in and cleared his name and everything. And I don't know, like he didn't spend. I don't think he spent any time in jail because he wasn't building bombs, but he panicked. Like he's the kind of guy, like if I remember correctly, he's a bug out guy kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And so
it's happening. It's going down.
It's going down.
We're heading to the hills.
We out. You know, like, I've been training for this.
Right.
You know.
He's heading to the top.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but that he said that was if not on the NORAD property, it was right near it.
Shine Mountain.
Yeah, and so we theorized that he might have even just stumbled into a training exercise.
That's what you could call it.
Yeah,
that's a fun word.
So in other words, it was training. You know, like, oh, here's an easy target.
Yeah.
You know, so what you're saying is it's almost like you're confirming that there is a lot of high level stuff happening there that would be almost sci-fi to ordinary people.
That's where Nikola Tesla set up his entire laboratory system.
Is that
Same
right?
place. Oh yeah.
Wow.
This is a high place. So like you got to understand there's cardinal points across the earth, and you are well with this, but there's cardinal points where the veil is thin. It's like a real thing. It's not like some kind of like it's a reality. It's like a physical, scientifically documentable event that takes place in some of these places. And that's why he chose that spot. That's why people, if you start to go to this place called Garden of the Gods, this is gigantic sandstone feature that just sticks up at the base of 14,110 foot Pikes Peak, this massive mountain. That's where Colorado Springs sits. And then it's a confluence of all these springs, these incredible hot, well, mostly cool water, but mineral rich springs called Manitou Springs. That's where I ended up going to high school. It's the highest concentrations of witches in the United States per capita occupy that area because it's a gigantic tunnel system that has been there from before the days of old, always been there. People have been there and they've been doing these kinds of participatory acts. Well, the United States military moved into there on a huge degree in the 1940s. And began to build during the Cold War, they began to build a lot of tunnel systems. And this is where the continuity of government operations headquarters was going to be when it came to the central part of the United States. And so Denver is ideally situated because you have the Great Plains to the east, and you have these gigantic cascades of mountains, the Rocky Mountains, as a shield behind you. And so that's why the continuity of government, if it ever relocates from the East Coast, it will go there. And that's where the base of major military operations has embedded itself. And so when somebody stumbles on something that might be a training, like you call it, like these are just basic kit that a lot of our soldiers have that's just not on the TV yet, you know, where soldiers are needing to be stealth technology, you know, or they're rubbing thermal creams on themselves to hide from any type of thermal imaging software. This is like low end of the tech side of the equation. But Fort Carson, which is where I was stationed, that without camp, I am adrift. That is a massive military base, and that's where, but abreast to that, there's 6 military bases surrounding Colorado Springs. So it is a gigantic ring of this, including deep underground military bases and stuff that goes up to Denver, and it's interlocked all the way up to Wyoming, where all the communications cables are for the entire country meet. So it's a really big area for all of that. And then you have all of the spiritual side of stuff that starts in the mountains, in particular in the Front Range and Rampart Range Road. So like my family ended up moving into this little town just outside of Colorado Springs, and like giant 5-pointed star, cardinal point, where everyone gathers on the high days, all the witch crap, right? All that stuff goes on in there, and that's embraced out there culturally. It's like the norm, and it's like normal that your children are part of this stuff. And so it's good to raise children in sick families in that environment. So that's what that hub caters to. Whereas Colorado Springs on the other side is focused on the family, and it's like die-hard Christian side, you know, and it's like, yeah, but all the creepy occultist people are on that side in Manitou Springs. You know, we keep them over there where they have their coffin races and all the rest of it, you know.
So we're gonna do an overtime with you. We're gonna focus heavy on the military experience, but I'm assuming the answer, and it's just yes or no. You don't need to go into detail. Have you ever been in an deep underground base?
Yes.
Of course you have. I figured you have, and it's probably not once. So, I definitely want to get into that for the overtime for sure. I want to kind of backtrack a bit to a couple things. One, you mentioned about people transforming their bodies, and that lichen is definitely that route. We've had people on the show, lots of people who have encountered these dog man type creatures. The one that comes to mind is episode 335. Kyle was the groundbreaking episode for me going into the dog man topic. I've had it before, but this was just like, whoa. It was short, long story short, he's 15 years old, hunting with his grandfather in Kentucky, Daniel Boone National Forest, the upper side of it. And it's middle of the night. His grandfather's in the truck because he was older, so they had radios. The dogs get on a scent. You hear him howling. He comes up on the scene, and he can hear his dogs fighting with coyotes. The coyotes go off. He only had 2 dogs out there, and in that fight, he heard his younger dog run off as well. So now the older dog, who's a really good hunter, really strong dog, is by himself, fights off these coyotes. They come back in, and it sounded like they came back in a pack almost, and started whooping up on his hound dog. I think it's a hound dog. Don't hold me to that, but hunting dog. And then he hears his other dog come back in. And when his other dog came back in, the fight changes. The coyotes are gone. He comes onto the scene. His older dog goes back to treeing the raccoon in the tree. He comes over, pats him on the head, and he hears his younger dog behind the tree chowing down on a coyote. He goes around the tree, and it's not the younger dog. The younger dog never came back. This was a very large dog on all 4. He said it was so big that it was holding a coyote by the rib cage in its mouth. And he said that when he came up on it, it looked at him and it stood up on its hind legs, took chase. That unfolds a whole scene where basically his hunting dog saved his life. His hunting dog did survive, but barely. He thought his dog would die at some point. That story that he shared on the show, is there any way outside of what you shared that it could be something else other than somebody that transformed from human to upright walking dog, that maybe was one of those people who weren't able to handle that and could never change back? Is that in your mind what that would be? Or do you think that there are actual creatures out there that maybe come from other realms, or maybe just like some people? I don't personally subscribe to the idea that Bigfoot's just this hairy primate that we can't catch.
Yeah.
I think there's more woo-woo stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's along those lines? What are your thoughts on that side of stuff?
That's a great question. Man, that's brutal. Because I think on one side of it, I think we really do have an entire subspecies of creatures that do exist mostly inside the earth, and they are not readily surface dwelling anymore. And I do believe, like in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, man, inside the London Bridge is a massive room, like a throne room, where they engage in this magic. But this Brotherhood of the Serpent, they call upon Nachash, the dragon. And
would that be in normal terms Satan?
Yeah, most people know him as Satan, right? Yeah. But like there is a great red dragon. Like it's a physical, that's what he looks like in reality. He was cursed, and man, he made him a monster. Yahweh made him a monster. And they would commune with these things. There's 13 grandfathers take 13 of their grandsons, and they bring them into these rooms and do these things on these specific times and rituals for all kinds of stuff. But the dragons tell them the future. This is like always what they've been able to do. Is like Satan leads Yeshua up onto a great high place and says, I shows them all the nations of the earth and all their kingdoms and their reigns in a moment of time. He shows them the future. That's what they do. They can show you what's to come. This is why we get hunted by them. He knows if we're going to be part of his adversaries. He knows if we're going to be on his enemy list. And that's why he targets us at our youth. That's what so happens. So many people, they're like, why has my life been a nightmare from the beginning? It's because you have a purpose and a destiny that adversary absolutely categorically does not want to come to pass. It's a real life Terminator scenario. And so he sends his assets in to destroy people, to ruin their life. And those meeting places happen when they sit down in these rooms and they try to call up these creatures. It's from inside the earth. It wasn't like ethereal mist. They were physical things that would come out of these tunnels. And they would come into the room and they would consume the offerings that were given there. And then the words of the Nachash would come forth, and they would prophesy to these guys. Like they would prophesy out of the mouth of the serpent what each one of their life callings, their shots. He's the shot caller, man. It's like a pimp from prison. He's calling the shots, and you had a bunch of fallen watchers that were in prison in Tartarus for a reason. Yeah, but they got ways of getting messages out, just like the cronies in jail today. You know, and that's what a lot of people are dealing with. They think they're dealing with the top dog, and they're like, I'm finally into the big game. And it's like you're dealing with, a private in the hierarchy, but he can masquerade like a general. And so some people are really dealing with death himself, and some of them are dealing with one of his princes. And this is what my family's covenant was with the dragon. They didn't mess around with it. They went all the way to the chain of command. They uncovered a bunch of my great grandfather's grandfather was an archaeologist who dug into the Indian mounds out in the Ohio River Valley. They started finding a priest class that was these serpent worshipers, and that's what they started calling upon. And they started trying to wake up and rise up Ochilos, which is these deities, these dragon fire deities that demand
Ohio.
Where these mounds were found, it's the Ohio River Valley. Yeah,
we're talking about serpent mounds.
Yeah, well, this wasn't specifically, not that I'm aware of that it was specifically a serpent mound, but it was a mound that was in an area that was now being farmed.
Okay.
And so whether or not it was specifically a serpent mound, it was not identified as that. But they ended up finding a lot of these ancient tombs. They found the writings of this priest class, and they started using their magic to call back up these fallen ones. And they were, the part of the trade is the priest class has all this secret knowledge that they then use to rule the kings with. And that's what they wanted. So that's how the Reynolds family, this is also documented in a book called The Gilded Leaf by Patrick Reynolds, who was a bloodline descendant specifically and in the actual inheritance of the Winston cigarette company, you know, the tobacco empire that ended up buying Nabisco Foods, that ended up running the world.
What relation is it to you? Like an uncle?
I don't know that I am a bloodline relative of that guy.
Oh, okay.
Patrick Reynolds specifically. My Reynolds family is the one that does the black gold stuff, all the secret, disgusting, dirty money. They're the white launderers of the money, right? But you got to have your seedy, corrupt group, and that's what my family did. They did all the dirty stuff.
Wow.
And so but in his book, in his firsthand account, they talk about the Joshua coin and them using a coin that was from Judas that he betrayed Yeshua with, and the 30 pieces of silver that was the blood guilt money. They would touch that silver coin to anything they wanted, and it would grow an empire. The cost was always massive bloodshed.
Wow, one of the coins Judas got. Wow.
And a massive demand of life. And that's always what the serpent required. He wanted life. And so like on one side of the equation, that's what they used to build the Reynolds empire. That's what they used to go down Alcoa and all the aluminum industry and all of the stuff they spray on us and the stuff they poison us with and inject us with and all the variables of complexities of targeting that they've done against us. That all comes from that covenant that those two brothers sat down, did, and entered into a blood covenant with the dragon, man.
Diane, a notice just come on. Russia's had another earthquake, 8.7.
And this is what the fruit of it was. Well, my family entered into that on a different route through this priest class thing. And that's what they would practice down there. And that's the same old religion that people have been using a long time. So on one side of it, I've seen physical beings that are definitely not like our animals up here come out of these spaces from inside the earth. I've seen in deep underground military bases, dogmen, like you would kind of describe them, some more humanized. And I think a lot of those were experimentation and genetic splicing. I think a lot of that was gene editing stuff that I've seen. But I do believe that some of these things are holdovers from the old days. They're the last of their kinds, and they've been breeding them, right? And I believe that that's the stuff that's prophesied that's going to come back out and cause the hearts of men to stop for fear of looking after these things that are coming up on the earth. You know, that's why everywhere I went throughout my youth, I could go to these tunnels.
Well, he's saying dogmen are going to come out of the abyss.
In these caves and call out, and I could hear them, and they would call back, you know, and it's like, it's a seductive power that draws you back into it.
You can call out to them, like, yeah. Was it like a language or a sound or what?
Oh yeah, man. You can learn to call to them. You can go out here in these hills out here and do it. You can still do it tonight on these full moons and stuff. You can start calling out, and you'll think you'll hear coyotes at first, and then all of a sudden it's a totally different, you know, it's a different sound that starts to resonate, and then it's a different one that calls off from over here, right? You got to understand, some of these guys that you think are just neighbors and stuff, or just people, like, this is what they keep in their barn, you know. This is the stuff they keep. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I go out hunting for these things.
I understand. Man, I was, that being said, I got hooked back into it with Timothy Alberino and Steve Quill and a lot of these guys when I was married, and my wife didn't know anything about this whole stinking world of who I was and everything else.
How'd you meet your wife if she didn't like a word? You sucked at her. You sucked at her.
That's a way to put it, man.
She's still with you, so she loves you. You know?
Bro, she's all in, man. She's amazing.
Cool.
She is my shield bearer, man. She's amazing. She has fought. We have waged a war together beyond your wildest imaginations. She has seen the full force of the occult come after us, and people slaughtering sacrifices to try to desecrate us, and people try to hunt us and murder us in front of her face, man, in front of my children's face. They've sent special kill teams after us in front of my children's face, man. And I've seen the living power, man. Recent.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That being said, man, I do believe that there is a hierarchy, and you can call upon the Most High, man, and He has delivered us. And I've never had to fire a shot at any of these guys. I haven't had to take out their drones. I have seen supernatural intervention. I've seen their weapons jam in front of my face, like chapter in the book called Murder on Their Minds, where I talk all about it, man. I've seen him provide supernatural miracles, because you got to understand, we're dealing with the fallen. We are not dealing with the Most High. And he owns a much more powerful arsenal. And let me tell you, at his word, all these nations, kingdoms, and thrones will bow. It's an absolute reality. It's an inevitability. And so that's why I serve him, man, because I've seen what the power of covenant is. And I had a covenant with the law of sin and death before in my life, but now I have a covenant with the Most High of peace and life. And he's given me a new purpose. He's given me a family. He's given me a mission. He's given me the opportunity to do the things I dreamed of when I was that little. Man, I used to run away in the night in Arizona, man, and I would run into the base of that mountain, man. There's these caves that are there that I just love caves. For me, it's safety in that. People call it hunting and all this. I'm like, dude, these to me were people. I'm more like a beast, man. I was ripping people's throats out with my teeth when I was a child to survive a fight. Like that does something to you when you try to see other children playing with a bat wing toy or whatever, and you're like, you're puking blood in the toilet.
Yeah.
Because of all the crap you just went through the night before, you know, and like you are unrelatable to men anymore. You can't comprehend the things that are in your mind when you have been defiled so systemically for so long. And so I just lived with dogs. I literally would flee into the yards with people, and I'd crawl into the dog loose and just survive the night. But then that wasn't enough, man, because these were city dogs. Then I started looking for the feral ones, man. I started looking for the coyotes, you know, and then I started looking for the wolves and crawling into their dens, because I can imitate any of them, man. I can crawl around like a dog. And
Are you
like
serious?
You bet, man.
Wow.
You can get them to take you in if you know their language, if you know their gestures. You can learn all of this stuff, man. And like when you're little, when you're like a child, they'll treat you different, you know. Yeah. And they like, man, I literally ended up living with these things, and they're like, I have this love for wolves because of that, because I've understood what a companion can be when you're desperate and distraught. And like, these were my best friends. And that sounds so weird to people, but like when I was a child, I bonded with the animals. I wanted to murder all the people because people were monsters. I couldn't imagine a world of the living. I got so lost in the world of the dead. And I just wanted to find some semblance of innocence and purity. And I could not find it in people because everybody was manipulating me. I was nothing but an asset to them. And I didn't know which end of me they wanted. Do they want my skills? Do they want what do they want from me? And so it perverted my understanding of people. And so I just fled to animals. And that's where I talk to these creatures and live with them. Well, then you start encountering these other ones, you know, and you start to befriend them. And it just becomes like a pack. Well, then my family would rip me away from that and move, and I would have to try to find a new one. And there was this just constant destabilization. And so there's a lot of people that get caught in that world, man, and people brand them as feral children, like you might want to call it, or whatever you want to call it, man. But they're survivors. That's what they are, man. They're overcomers. They're the remnant. They're the leftovers of nightmares. Wow. And you know what? They're some of the most incredible people or things that have ever been. And that's why I'm here to preach the gospel to every creature. That's what it says. My commission from my king, who gave me my marching orders, is to preach the gospel to every creature. That's what I'll do, man. I'll do it in the tunnels. I'll do it everywhere, from the tops of the roofs to the bottom of the earth. But I'm much more familiar and comfortable down there than I am out here. This is the world of oddities, where people think this stuff is like legend and myth and strangeness. And it's like, you go into these families, they broker deals with this stuff. They get down with these things, and they generationally raise their children to have that seed line in them. So it's a different world than what most people are used to. But I tell you what, these animals they carry a history of what this land used to look like and what these people used to be. And it wasn't that long ago. This is a short history when you think of the last 150 years in the United States. That's not long ago. It was a wilderness. And there used to be 150 million people who lived here, who raised animals and livestock and farmed and cultivated landscapes and brilliant, massive, beautiful cities. And yet they interacted with giants and these creatures that were oddities for time and antiquity.
You're talking about unwritten history.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. You keep throwing everything out here, and I haven't even got to how you met your wife.
Oh, yeah. We got there.
So are you talking along the lines of like people talking about Tartaria today, and like how they basically built over entire civilizations and some of these structures that we have in these big cities? Like, for instance, I've heard this, and I've heard both sides of it. So in Philadelphia, they say that City Hall is actually remnants of an old civilization. We didn't actually build it. It has been here. Maybe we built on top of it or something like that. But when coming from that area, I used to run Center City, especially as like a rookie driver. They send everybody down to Center City. And so you're pedaling freight down in Center City with a freaking truck. And I can't describe to people how massive City Hall is in Philly. It's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen in my life. And I've been in it. It is absolutely massive. You will get lost if you don't know where you're going. And I forget how long, but the idea of decades sticks out in my head. Like I was told that it took an extremely long time to build that building. And that always sat weird to me. I was like, how does it take that long to build a building? Like, you know, I mean, this isn't like something that was built, I say thousands of years ago where they were, you know, making the brick by brick, make the brick, then put the brick there kind of thing or whatever, you know? And so that I go off on that spiel because that's something that always sticks out in my head when I talk about Tartaria and things
Hey,
like
Talia,
that.
good to see you.
Is that kind of like the angle that you're talking about? Like this idea that there was, you said 150,000 or a million people that lived here and they traded with giants and the cities and civilizations. What happened to those things?
Well, I wasn't really hitting on the Tartaria and the architecture side of it. And there's other examples like the City Hall in Iowa and other places. I traveled, like I told you before, 4.5 years in an RV. And at the time, mud flood in Tartaria was in. And I was like, well, I'm going to go look. So I just started traveling around to these places specifically to try to find and identify and document evidence of this catastrophic event, or like, are these recovered cities, as opposed to the idea that we, you know, all bit these with horse and buggy and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know, like, I wanted to know for myself, but that isn't specifically the history line that I was talking about. I'm talking about before that, the side of it that is definitely more like when you go in, like one of the best books for those of you that are book guys, The Discovery and Conquest of Mexico by Hernan del Castillo is the firsthand account of the conquistadors coming into the Americas and their strategies and tactics for infiltrating and enthroning a new deity known as Mary, right, the Queen of Heaven. They wanted to invoke her over this territory. And there was a massive battle between the priest class during that time. And you get to see these hierarchy of these ones that were worshiping in Mexico City predominantly, that was running a massive human trafficking campaign and all the sacrifices and slaughters that are happening for that. Now, I mean, it's nationwide at that point. And we're talking millions of people that are being fed, physically fed through butcheries to the priests. Like that's the way they did it. And that priest class fled north into the Americas when they got persecuted. And they came into the Americas, the Northern America, and they brought a lot of that ideology with them. And they began to use that, weaponize that power, and start to take over the people that were up here. And they began to eradicate them and butcher them and force them into compliance with this. And then the land responded with this desecration, and all these invaders began to come in. But this is stuff that they had prophesied was going to happen. And so a lot of them, they literally did not fight. They literally had prophecies that there was going to.
Yeah, I think it was Dying posted the earthquake, and I just got a notice watching my tablet. Russia's had another earthquake, 8.8. I'm pretty sure it said that.
Come bearded men with shiny metal helmets, and they're going to come and you're supposed to bow down and yield to them. And so that's what they did. That's why you had a few hundred guys with a few horses and dogs, unbelievable hunting dogs. Crazy stories in there, full armor, killing squads of people, dogs single-handedly. It's
From Europe?
Yeah, bro. You want to talk about what dogs can do? We have no idea what dogs do. Oh yeah, DeSoto and what he brought with his dogs from the Americas. Most terrifying things that the natives had ever encountered was the dogs, because they would kill hundreds of people, like just jump from one to the next, ripping throats out. Like these are all documented things. So I love that side of the history of understanding where did this all come
Wow, I
in
never
from,
knew that.
and why was there the expunging of the record of anybody who had a culture or a written language. Well, that's because we wanted to support this ideology of manifest destiny for this invasion force that was coming from Europe, was that it is our right to rule over these savages and to begin to take their territory. But ahead of that was the surveyors, and then ahead and following them was this military expedition across the West, which was to the Army Corps of Civil Engineering, eradicate the history of the people out there. And that's what they did. That's why they built dams and rivers and lakes in specific places and changed geography. They're sponging any evidence that this is a advanced civilization. But we have firsthand accounts of people that said, we've been in the biggest cities of Europe, and over here, they're better and more beautiful and more grand and well-designed than anything we've ever encountered. Wow. This is not just one. Many, 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 many people that came over here in the beginning could not understand the capacity of the people that were here. This is the origin place of the earth in so many more ways than what people think of as Africa. This place is where the first documented evidence of a horse, of a camel, of all of these languages, mummies, the oldest mummies in the world. All this stuff is here. It's just not public.
Wow.
It's publicly accessible. It's just not popular.
You know what's interesting is that you say that, and fast forward a few hundred years, here we are, and now we look at European cities and we're like, man, they're so beautifully built. But look how clean they are, because our cities suck. Like everything's falling apart. Nothing's built to last more than 50 years. Like it's just, you know, it kind of totally flip flops. That's wild. So.
Learning about the best schools in the area is news to Rachel because it helps her daughter excel in ways she never dreamt of.
As we've been tracking ever since the IMF refused.
All right, I'm going to go back again. And I do want to hit on the story of how your relationship with your wife evolved and stuff, because, you know, and we will hit everybody listening right now. First of all, we will ask the question of where are your parents today? How do you get, what's the story there? Because that's, I even told you that's the question I was going to ask you at some point. But I'm looking at my, and I also, while I'm talking here, before we go any further, I didn't say in the beginning, I will put it in the link in the description. You do have a book. You did mention it. And I was like, dang, I didn't mention it in the beginning, but it's called Snatched from the Flames, One Man's Journey to Uncover the Family Secrets Buried in His Blood-Stained Past. And that is available on Amazon, and I will put the link in the description of this episode. But let's talk about family. Let's start with the family that you love now. How did you meet your wife? How did that whole thing evolve? Did you ever think that you'd have to tell her this stuff? Did you have plans? If not, what spawned you telling her? How did she take it?
Yeah.
All that. Like, yeah. I'm very interested on the social side of this. Like
she, when I got out of the military, I ended up studying psychology at the University of Colorado at Boulder. You know, I wanted to put people back together. I was tired of taking them apart, and I wanted to understand what the heck was going on in my mind, because I lost. When the military washed me out, man, they scrubbed my memory. They did multiple traumatic brain injuries and all kinds of specific things to try to expunge what had happened there. They don't want you telling your secrets. Anyways, I was a dribbling mess. I literally couldn't remember how to walk right, eat right. I had Post-it notes on my wall to tell me to shower and put on clothes and names. I went from savant level IQ kind of stuff to like impossibly debilitated, and it was excruciating on me. And so I just went on this path of trying to just restore my mind and get my mind to function again. And it was in the course of that I ended up going to this church out in Colorado, which is called Flatirons Community Church. And they had this college ministry at the time, and a recovery ministry. And that's really, man, where my heart planted, was in this Celebrate Recovery. They called it Shift. Oh, yeah. And there was just messy people, bro, that loved the Lord, and they loved him so much. And they were passionate about helping the wounded. And I was walking wounded, man. I was a heart halter monitor on at the time, man. I was like, I didn't like my whole life. I'm like the last man standing for some stupid reason that I couldn't understand when I was young. I just wanted to die. I just wanted to die so bad, man, all my life. I just wanted to die, and I never could die. No matter what anybody ever tried, always I lived, you know, and I was so tired of it. And I ended up going to this church, and these people like loved on me, not the way like Christians had in the past in the same way. Like my family was Christians. I went to all kinds of different denominations throughout all of this experience. But meanwhile, my family would pedal me back out the back door, you know? And so my version of what a biblical minister was capable of was so jacked up. I thought they were weak cowards. That's what I knew Christians as. Like, I knew that pastors are easy to manipulate if you give them the right tithe check. You know, like I'd seen what a bribe did to justice. But then I finally started going to this place where it's just authentic people that just were real. And it just gave me such a joy and a hope, man. And I'm a passionate person about whatever I pursue, man. And I pursue that with everything in me. And I'm a natural like evangelist. I'm going to make stuff famous, and I love it. And so anyways, this college ministry exploded out there, and I was the connections lead, and I ended up meeting my wife at this college group that we would have. We'd serve pasta and talk about the scriptures and get to know people outside of Boulder. And she ended up walking down the stairs one day. I write it all very romantic in the beginning of my book, bro. I was like chasing her, you know, and she was like, not about it, dude. I was couch dude at the time. I was like living on a couch because I wanted to have this Harlequin Great Dane, great hunting dog. They're a castle dog. That's what you use to guard your castle. When the master is in the house, they're wonderful. When the master is away, they'll rip your throat out. They're amazing. Anyways, I was raising this dog, so I had to live on a friend's couch so I could have this dog in my dreams. And I met her, and she was just like way out of my league immediately. And I just was like, not having it. It's not going to happen. She was like way older than me and highly successful. And I was like, eating out of trash cans, and so but she liked me, man. It was great. It was beautiful, man. I don't know how, but it worked out pretty well, man. I romanced her like crazy. I called them adventures. We didn't call it dating. I just took her on adventures way late at night. She used to work night shifts, so we hang out at 3 in the morning.
Dating requires putting on money.
Oh, yeah. Dating requires putting on a title that other people were not about. Like, oh, her sister did not want me to be with her at all. She like sat me down and tried to scare me off.
Really?
Yeah, 'cause I was like young. I was like 19, and I was like, bro, I was all over the place, compared to what she was used to. And she's like, my sister, she deserves this, and what are you? And I'm like, not that. Yeah. But anyways, man, I ended up going to Afghanistan, and I was on that trip to Afghanistan. I was like, I gotta be with this woman. I came back and was like, I want to be with you, and she was like, I'll think about it. And I was like, no. It's crushed. But she ended up doing it, man. We ended up like being together, and we ended up getting married a couple of years later. And dude, I didn't tell her any of this. She knew I was a mess. Let me be clear. She was a mess at the time when I met her too. She was a wreck from all the things I was talking about earlier at the hospital they were forcing her to do, and were just killing her health horribly. And she was sick. And so we got married sick together. It was great. We were a total hot mess. Our first year was a nightmare because I was a screaming nightmare at night. How do you tell that to somebody before we weren't sleeping together before we got married? Mm-hmm. She didn't know that, she didn't know that I would have these terrors of the night, she didn't know that I was a different person at night. And then all of a sudden into our marriage, my dad comes back in because he wants to control again. He wants to make the money. And I'm a highly monopolized individual to these families. And they wanted that again. And they wanted to turn on the old other side, which is this Nathan and Jason side. And they wanted to make money with that because their business was failing. They're in the bed and breakfast industry now. That's the good cover for all kinds of filthy stuff that happened at a hotel. And they film it and document it and keep it in private drives and create a blacklist on people. But
so that's
the family business.
You're talking about like Epstein type stuff?
Oh yeah.
So I know this, but just for the audience, you're saying Epstein isn't the only Epstein.
That's like late in the game guy.
Yeah.
And I know most people think that's super high level. That's still mid-level in the world of families. He's not the family man in the same way, right? You can run into a different synagogue of Satan everywhere you turn, right? You can run into the great whore of Babylon that sits in Rome and Vatican City, all over the place. But then there's these old bloodlines too that are a completely different thing. And they have different ways of controlling people. And information and secrets is what my family trafficked in predominantly. And so my parents on one side, they had a great Christian front in everything they did. But inside, that's where business happened. And it's because they're split personality people. One side is wholly given over to this, and the other side is wholly given over to something else. And so that's what I was raised in, and it was as normal as breathing. But
interesting enough, I don't know who's all read the book. He came to set the captives free, but in that book, it's talking about how the girl who ended up in a satanic camp went there because she went to church and somebody from church invited her. Watch out for these serpents in the congregations.
Wife didn't know any of this stuff, and she was not from a family like this. She grew up in like a normal middle-class American Christian home, and I did go to focus on the family kind of stuff.
Welcome back, Phil.
She got it was on. So but the trigger event that changed the whole story was my dad moved back in with us for a few weeks.
How'd you let that happen?
You don't exactly have free will. It's like a real important thing to understand when you're a yes man still. I didn't have anything to really fight for besides my wife at the time. I didn't have children. And they castrated me when I was young. They make you a eunuch so that you can go into the king's.
Really? So even having kids is a miraculous thing
that's what started it all, dude.
Wow.
So what happened though, my dad changed me around and he brought out the other side of me. And so you wake up in the middle of a marriage and I don't know who my wife is. And I go from being this happy, fun, loving Nate, wild guy that's shirtless all the time playing and diving into stuff to this guy that's full.
Guys, I might switch to the link Diane sent earlier in the show. It looks very interesting because he's just saying, pretty much we learn what we can off him. Where is it? There it is.
World's smartest kid thinks that all right, I went on, one night fucking smoking. I went on a little YouTube wormhole situation, and somehow, I don't even know if it's a YouTube video or somewhere else, but I wound up on this video that was like, world's smartest kid thinks that CERN blew the world up in 2008. All right. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I go on this video, right? And I'm watching this video, dude. And it's this young kid. He's like 12, and the motherfucker's talking. You know, you got to invest like 20 minutes into this kid talking about things that are super smart. And it's kind of like to show you he's super smart. You know what I mean? This kid. And his dad's doing the recording, I believe, or a relative, somebody very close to him. And he goes into this whole theory of how he thinks when they collided the electrons, I believe, in the super collider. Sorry, that they caused some crazy chain reaction that blew up the universe. But they also weighed. They created an atom that weighed too much. And the first 20 minutes is also explaining infinite parallel universes. So what the kid winds up with is this theory of like one atom weighing too much and if that being just enough to shift our universe into a parallel universe. Yeah, this is it right here, dude. So this kid had me fucked up because after I watched this, everything I saw for months was talking about, like, it would be news guy on the news, like, I don't know what universe I'm in anymore, or is Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, like all these, everything I saw for like 4 or 5 months after watching this video was like multiverse shit, like shit about multiverses, and it's got me fucked up, Joe.
I hear you. I'm fucked up too now.
Fucked up, man.
Listen, read this kid. Look at what it says there. He claims that CERN destroyed the universe during recent experiments, which has resulted in us living in a nearby parallel universe instead.
You're welcome, Eddie.
And I'm laying in bed and you know, full blown experience, and you know, can barely sleep because all the colors are keeping me awake and my mind is racing. And then I have a lucid dream. And I'm dreaming and I wake up and I go downstairs and I go, I had this crazy dream. And what's your dream? And I said, I saw thousands of cattle dead, baking in the sun. I said, I think there's going to be a nuclear war. But what could kill all these cattle? You know, at the time, the Reagan administration and all that, and you know, the tension was really high between the Soviet Union and the United States. And they said, and they were joking with me, saying, "Oh, well, okay, you know, when's going to happen?" I go, "I know. I was in Olympia, and I needed to rush up to Darrington to stay in my cabin because my books were up there, my manuscripts up there. I need to save my research." So they laughed and said, "Well, when's the world going to end, Paul?" And I go, "Well, it's not this weekend. That was like in 2 days. It's next weekend." So they wrote on the calendar, December 1st. I put it in my book. I think it's 1975, the end of the world. They wrote, "Paul predicts the end of the world." So we forgot that. Massive rains the next week, huge amounts of snowfall. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, temperature inversion. And it flipped to 75 to 85 degrees. All the snow started to melt. All the rivers were flooding. And my little cabin was right next to this river that would swell from morning to night. It would go up 6 feet just from the snow melt, because it's very close to this volcano and the glaciers. I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my manuscript, all my research. I need to get up there. I need to get up there." And so I'm watching the news, and the roads are being closed. So I had to go through Rockport, Washington, the back way in order to get back to my cabin. I get to my cabin, and the bank had eroded about 10 feet. I was only about 10, 12 feet away from the river now. My cabin was on the verge of falling into it. But I got my manuscript, I got all my books, you know, I rescued all the material I had, but I couldn't get out of there because the roads had been closed. And so I had to wait 2 days, and the roads then opened up, and I drove out of the valley into the Snohomish Valley, and I went around the bend, and there the sun, it was a brilliant sunny day, a warm day, and there floating in the fields were hundreds and hundreds of dead cattle.
Whoa.
How do you explain that?
Something like the Matrix, something that's so immersive that you would forget, right, that you were inside a video game. And so that led me to this idea of the simulation point, which is a kind of technological singularity. But then I started to research things like quantum physics and some of the mysteries around, you know, the observer effect and quantum mechanics. And then I started to look at all the world's religions, and I realized that they're all kind of saying the same thing, which is that there is no physical universe. And so, you know, that led me to the conclusion that we are most likely inside some kind of a computer simulation or a massively multiplayer video game, depending on how you look at it.
But where did that computer game, where did that simulation come from if we are inside of it?
Well, that's the big question, right? And there's two versions of simulation theory. And, you know, I teach a class on this at Arizona State University. It's probably the first college level class about simulation theory, and it kind of pulls in science fiction, religion, philosophy, and technology. But one of the key distinctions I tell my students to make, because it's not talked about a lot with simulation theory, is what I call the NPC versus the RPG versions of simulation theory.
Okay.
Right. So NPC, as you probably know, means, you know, non-player characters within video games. So those are the AIs in the video game. You know, the bartenders, the people you're beating up, the opponents, all of that stuff. But basically, they're just code and they're AI. Then there's the RPG version, which is that we are actually doing a role-playing game, right? So you exist outside the game, and then you have a character or avatar inside the game. So it's just like what we would consider an MMORPG today, right? Except with more sophisticated technology. And so in that case, you know, you get a little bit of a different answer than if you talk about an NPC only type of simulation, right? Because that's just running on a computer, and we're all AI in that case. Now,
okay, it's a little bit way out there, guys. Yeah, you got it.
Jesus Christ, I am asking that if you can, to welcome to the Watchman channel. This channel is all about world news and Bible prophecy, pointing to the soon return of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am asking that if you can, to please help to financially support this ministry. If you feel led to pledge any amount of money, it would be extremely helpful.
Diane, I didn't know whether to take it serious or not. They're making some big claims, the end of the world, we've moved into another dimension. If they're saying that, but that's not part of the Bible's plan, so I don't know what's going on there.
Helpful and greatly appreciated. There is a PayPal link in the description box and in my pinned comment below. You can also donate using Cash App. My cash tag is $.
Yeah, I'll go back to it and see what it says. Where is it?
Now, the two aren't mutually exclusive, right? In a video game like Fortnite or whatever, World of Warcraft, you have NPCs and you have PCs or player characters, right? So you've got both of those things going on. And so depending on how you look at it, you might come to different, different answers about who's outside the simulation, which would answer the question of who made the simulation, right?
Yeah.
So in the first case, you basically say that if we can get to the point where we can build these simulations, what I call the simulation point. So I call that a kind of technological singularity. Now, we've heard the term singularity mostly because of like AI and super intelligent AI, right? And AI is going to take over the world. But the guy who defined the term was actually a computer scientist who became a science fiction writer named Werner Benji. In fact, he just passed away like a month ago or something. He was a real pioneer in like science fiction and the cyberpunk kind of subgenre or so. And so he said the singularity happens when technology increases exponentially to the point where everything will be different for humans after that point.
I entered, I think, into the multiverse.
Now, as a scientist, you realize when you say something like that, you open yourself up to ridicule. Do you feel hesitant to communicate these ideas?
Well, to a degree, yes. But, I'm 62 years of age. And, at one point, I just don't care. I just don't care. This is true. This happened to me. And I can push the envelope on these ideas because the credibility of my research is well established. I can save the bees. Do you care whether I have taken psilocybin mushrooms if I can save your farm, your family, your country, or the world billions of dollars and protect biosecurity?
I care more.
I care more. That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you things. I'm not making these up. I don't think you are. I don't have to.
I just wonder.
But just because you can't explain it does not mean it's not true.
Right.
And I think that we need to accept the fact that the reality is not limited to the perception that we have traditionally used.
Apparently a bunch of people who think Mandela died in prison.
Right.
And like there's, as far as I know, he was released, became president of South America, and that's the universe I'm from, just personally. You know, but it's crazy, dude. Because it's not just this video. It's like you watch it, and that YouTube algorithm starts sending you down a whole bunch of other. You know what I mean? You start hearing and it's like and then again, everything that came out, there was all these shows I would see or movies or news things about the multiverse. All of a sudden was everywhere around me. It was fucking nutty, dude. So I'm fucked up about that shit right now.
Well, if there was something they could do, that might open up a door to a parallel universe, you don't think they would do it?
Stranger Things, you mean?
Yeah.
Say that's
This
the goal.
is Stranger Things. I mean, things are strange, right? It is Stranger Things.
Bizarro world.
You know what's the weirdest one? Is the people that dismiss climate change. That is the weirdest one to me.
Right.
So like, I'm trying to figure out what's the benefit of dismissing climate change, other than if you work for like the oil industry or something.
Well, Iceland just lost a glacier.
Yeah.
Like they just posted a whole thing of 10 year or 80, like something in the 80s, a glacier picture of it, and just now and it's
there's climate change, but it's not caused by man, it's caused by God.
Gone.
But I'm not even saying like blaming anybody for it. I'm saying dismissing it as an issue. Like, let's pretend that people have nothing to do with it. I wish people had nothing to do with it. Because then we can go, holy fuck, it's getting hot. Like, how hot is it going to get? You've done an amazing job in this book of trying to boil it down for dummies like me, but it's hard. It is a complicated and insanely nuanced subject.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it like this many worlds theory, for one example, just the possibility that there's like, explain that.
Sure.
Explain for people that don't understand what quantum mechanics even means. Give them just like a little bit of that, and then explain many worlds theory.
Yeah, good. This is what I'm here to do. So,
Thank you.
You know, an electron, take an electron. Quantum mechanics should apply to the entire universe, but it becomes unmistakable when you look at little tiny things, right? So we always are talking about electrons or atoms and so forth. An electron has a position, and, well, sorry, let me not even say that. Even that was wrong. It's just so hard to correctly talk about quantum mechanics, right? If you were Isaac Newton, before there was quantum mechanics, there was classical mechanics. And basically, quantum mechanics and classical mechanics are the only two big frameworks that have ever existed in physics. You know, classical mechanics was so good that everyone thought that was just right, and it was all a matter of filling the details until quantum mechanics came along and changed things. In classical mechanics, an electron is a point. It has a position, a location in space, and it has a velocity. It's moving somewhere. And from that, you can predict what's going to happen. Okay? Quantum mechanics says, no, no, no. The electron has a wave function. So if there's a wave, you know, sometimes you hear this debate about are things like electrons and photons, particles or waves. The answer is that they're waves. And the wave function has this weird property that when you're not looking at it, it's a wave, it's all spread out or it's localized somewhere, but it obeys an equation, the Schrodinger equation. So far, so good, just like regular physics. There's a thing, the wave function, it obeys an equation, the Schrodinger equation. You can predict what's going to happen next. But the weird thing about quantum mechanics is that there's a whole separate set of rules for what happens when you look at the thing, when you observe it, when you measure it.
That's where things get squirrely with people describing it, right?
Yes.
And that's where they want to go woo-woo on you.
It's an opening to be woo, right? When you say, like, what do you mean observe something? Like, does it have to be a conscious being? Can it be a video camera? You know, that's just weird, right?
Is it the act of measuring that changes things?
Well, this is the puzzle, okay? This is what is called the measurement problem of quantum mechanics. That the rules we teach our students at Caltech or anywhere else, when we teach them quantum mechanics in their sophomore year of college, the rules say when a system is observed, when it is measured, its state, its wave function changes dramatically, suddenly, and unpredictably.
Now, let me ask you this. How do we know this based on if you're measuring it and it changes? How do we know? Because we didn't measure it before. Like, what observations are we making that we understand the state of it before it's measured without measuring it?
Good. There's a couple of ways. So let me make things even simpler. Forget about where the electron is located and think about the electron is spinning, right? The electron is spinning just like the Earth spins. It's really exactly like that. It's like a little spinning top, except when you measure the spin, you can sort of send the electron through a magnetic field and it will get deflected either up or down, depending on whether it's spin up or spin down. you only ever get one of two answers. It's either going up or going down. It's nowhere in between. This is an empirical measured fact, okay? So that's a part of quantum mechanics. That's the quantum fact, that there's discrete set of possible answers to this question. Is it spinning clockwise or counterclockwise? Yes or no. It's just those two possibilities, nowhere in between. So if you have a magnetic field that is oriented vertically, send your electron through it, it gets deflected up, you say, oh, it's spin up. So now I've measured its spin. Now I know what its state is. If I send it through another magnetic field or oriented vertically, it will always be deflected up every single time. We know what it is. We're going to measure it. Measuring it in this case doesn't change it. It's in exactly that state. We know it. Okay. Now let's send it through a magnetic field that is oriented horizontally. So it's going to be deflected either right or left. We know exactly what state it's in. It's spinning this way. But when you send it through that magnetic field that's oriented horizontally, it gets deflected left or right 50-50, unpredictably. There's no way we can predict it. And then once it is, so okay, now it's been spinning up, you measured its spin left, let's say, send it through another magnet that is going vertically. And now it's 50-50 again. It could be spin up or spin down. So somehow, even though we knew exactly what state it was in, we couldn't predict what would happen next. That is part of quantum mechanics.
Well, if there was something they could do, that might open up a door to a parallel universe, you don't think they would do it?
Stranger Things, you mean?
Yeah.
Say that's
This is Stranger Things. I mean, things are strange, right? It is Stranger Things.
Bizarro world.
Okay, this is Lupin, I think, guys.
You know what's the weirdest one? Is the people that dismiss climate change.
Yeah, it's Lupin, guys.
$Watchman 1963. Thank you all so much for your prayers and support. God bless. Jesus said, as a sign of his coming and the end of the age, there would be an increase in deception, false Christ,
exactly, Talia.
wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, Christian persecution, apostasy, false prophets, and lawlessness, causing the love of many to grow cold. Jesus said all of these signs would come like birth pains. Jesus was likening last days events to a woman in labor. As the labor progresses, the pains increase in both frequency and intensity until the baby finally comes. As we get closer to Jesus' return, all the signs he gave us as a sign of his coming and the end of the age will become more frequent and more intense. All of these signs are manifesting around the world in our time. Daniel 9:26 and 27. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with the flood, until the end of the war desolations are determined. Then he, the Antichrist, shall confirm a covenant with many, who is Israel, the Palestinians, and possibly other Muslim nations, for 1 week, which is 7 years. But in the middle of the week, 3.5 years, he, the Antichrist, shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wings of abominations shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. In Bible prophecy, we are told in Daniel 9:26 and 27, the prince who is to come, who is the Antichrist, will come on the world scene and strongly confirm a 7-year covenant of peace in the Middle East between Israel and her enemies. This covenant will kick off the 7-year tribulation. Are we seeing any signs of a covenant of peace in the Middle East between Israel and her enemies today?
Nalka reports that in coming days, the UK plans to announce a peace plan that includes a Palestinian state.
We understand the goal, which is to try to help peace, but we consider that it is counterproductive because at the end, this decision, this recognition of a Palestinian state will be considered by the Hamas as its own victory.
We are coming up with various plans. We're going to say it's a very difficult situation.
I don't know why it's glaring.
If they didn't have the hostages, things would go very quickly.
Israel is sending more humanitarian aid into Gaza. President Donald Trump says the U.S. will begin setting up food centers in the area. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the images of starvation in Gaza are Hamas propaganda.
Explosions Monday night. Humanitarian aid drops by morning. Opposing scenes in Israel's war in Gaza. The IDF is now pausing operations 10 hours a day to improve the flow of aid into the territory. President Trump says he's seen images of hungry children and is strategizing with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to feed them.
We're going to set up food centers, and we're going to do it in conjunction with some very good people, and we're going to supply funds. And we just took in trillions of dollars. We have a lot of money, and we're going to spend a little money on some food, and other nations are joining us.
Netanyahu calls accusations of deliberate starvation a bold-faced lie, insisting images of hungry Palestinians are an act of Hamas propaganda.
There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza. We enable humanitarian aid throughout the duration of the war to enter Gaza, otherwise there would be no Gazans.
Seeming to back that claim, recent footage from Al Sahaba market in Gaza City, packed with food, and reports that a photo of an emaciated child held up by news outlets as the face of starvation in Gaza was actually a child with a genetic disorder who was evacuated from Gaza in June. Israel also released video claiming to show Hamas looting humanitarian aid meant for civilians.
Israel is dealing with an immoral, an evil enemy, genocidal enemy, massacred, mass raped our citizens, and an immoral, morally confused West that's making us feed our enemy, even though it's known that Hamas itself takes the aid and sells it at exorbitant prices to its own people.
At the United Nations Monday, France urged the EU to push Israel toward a two-state solution, triggering protests by Jewish groups in France. The US.
No wonder the shit's going to hit the fan when this happens. It's all set up for it.
The State Department called the meeting a staged conference. Nowcom reports that in coming days, the UK plans to announce a peace plan that includes a Palestinian state.
We understand the goal, which is to try to help peace, but we consider that it is counterproductive because at the end, this decision, this recognition of a Palestinian state will be considered by the Hamas as its own victory.
We are coming up with various plans. We're going to say it's a very difficult situation. If they didn't have the hostages, things would go very quickly.
We see the prophesied Antichrist ride onto the world stage in Revelation 6:2. Immediately following the rider of the white horse beginning his conquest of the world, we see peace will be taken from the earth when the rider of the red horse of war begins his ride across the earth, as we read in Revelation 6:3 and 4. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword. Those who are here to see this will be as those who lived in the days of Noah. All will be well, and life will be moving forward as normal when suddenly a flood of God's judgment will begin to fall on mankind, which will last for 7 years, the culmination of which will be the visible, physical, bodily return of Jesus Christ to the earth at Armageddon. So as we look at what prophecy predicts is going to occur, potentially in the not too distant future, the world is someday going to rejoice that peace has finally come to the Middle East. What will follow that, however, will be anything but peace, as the world is suddenly going to explode into warfare. All those who believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior will not be here
I can't seem to stop the glare, guys.
God's judgment will fall upon a world that has forgotten him. Where will we be? In the presence of Jesus Christ, our Lord, as a result of the rapture of the church. And there will be no announcement as to when that will take place whatsoever prior to it occurring. And if you find yourself here after it occurs, your future is going to be horrific. The stage is being set for Daniel's prophecy concerning the arrival of the Antichrist, which will be preceded by the rapture of the church. The only conclusion one can draw from all this is this: Jesus Christ is coming soon. Consider this a heads up if you're a Christian, and be forewarned if you're a non-believer. If you're watching this and you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, it's time to get to know him, and the sooner the better.
Hours after the ceasefire announcement, Soklang reunites with her 2 dogs. She's returned home from a resettlement camp with her husband and father, but is still unsure about what the future could hold.
I'm really concerned that fighting will happen in the future. I've had this experience before when I was younger, and I don't want to live through it again. Living in the resettlement camp is nothing like living in our homes.
Across the border, it's a similar sentiment.
I still don't feel comfortable because they only announced it a day ago. I'm not confident. If it breaks out again, I'll have to leave.
Since the ceasefire came into effect at midnight, the Thai army has accused Cambodia of launching multiple attacks, which Cambodia denies. Existing tension over a border issue boiled over last Thursday when a landmine dismembered a Thai soldier. Combat turned heavy, involving jets and heavy artillery that pushed hundreds of thousands from their homes and killed around 36 people. With both Bangkok and Phnom Penh seeking trade deals with Washington, it was only when Donald Trump added his own pressure to sit down and talk that Malaysia and China were able to broker a truce.
This is a vital first step towards de-escalation and the restoration of peace and security.
Despite conflicting accounts of the border situation, military commanders from both sides met on Tuesday and agreed to maintain the ceasefire, stop any troop movement, and facilitate the return of wounded and dead bodies.
This is a vital first step towards de-escalation and the restoration of peace and security.
In 1 Thessalonians 5:3, the Apostle Paul writes, "For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape." The Bible makes it clear that the world's promise of peace is deceptive and short-lived. While many will be declaring peace and safety, the scriptures warn that this will only set the stage for sudden destruction. Just as labor pains come suddenly and cannot be avoided, so too will judgment come upon a world that rejects God while seeking false security in worldly promises of peace. Is the sudden destruction coming, and with it the rapture of the church, the revealing of the Antichrist, and war?
The men here doing some rushed and temporary repairs. As you can see, the window completely blown out. It's raining outside. The tenant of this flat, incredibly lucky to be alive. He says he was working here around 2 a.m. Suddenly a massive explosion. Have a look in here. This is his kitchen. Again, the front wall blown out, destruction. It's been reported that at least 8 people were injured in this building, including a child.
There was a lot of smoke. It came from the kitchen and spread through the apartment. Usually I don't go anywhere when there's an alert, and I tend to watch where the drones are flying from. They usually come from a certain direction, but last night, for some reason, it was from this side.
I always have my emergency bag packed. Since the beginning of the war, I've only gone to the shelter twice, but this time something really pushed me to run. I came out to the shelter around 5 a.m. The explosion was powerful, even in the metro. It shook so hard, the lights started flickering.
It's believed that this damage was caused by an interception of either a drone or some form of missile. That's certainly according to the residents we've spoken to here. The government says that it was one of more than 330 attacks overnight. But one thing you consistently hear now is that people are taking these air alerts far more seriously since this increase in attacks that we've seen in Kiev and across the country over the last couple of months.
President Trump has taken a hard line with Russia. He's been working to broker peace with Ukraine, but he is growing frustrated with President Vladimir Putin.
I'm not so interested in talking anymore. He talks, we have such nice conversations, such respectful and nice conversations, and then people die the following night with a missile going into a town. Russia could be so rich right now. Instead, they spend all their money on war. They spend everything on war and killing people, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev responded, "Each new ultimatum is a threat and a step toward war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road."
Jesus, speaking to his disciples about the signs of his coming and the end of the age, declares this in Matthew 24:12. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. The Bible tells us lawlessness is the
Isn't that the case now? Lawlessness. It's everywhere.
violation of God's commandments, as we read in 1 John 3:4. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. Sin will be so rampant and so commonplace in the last days that the love people once had for one another, for many, will be non-existent. In this prophecy, Jesus Christ is describing an ongoing breakdown in the relationship with God. And since people's love for God is waning, it will be evident in the way people treat one another as well. A symptom may be that the love toward other people is decreasing, But the real cause is that the relationship with God is cooling off. This is what we are witnessing in our world today.
We will begin with that shocking mass shooting here in New York City. Police say a gunman walked right into the lobby of an office building and opened fire. 4 people are dead, including an NYPD officer.
You can see the suspect here carrying a military-style rifle. Police say he had a history of mental health issues.
You're responding to an active shooter incident.
Law enforcement officers raced into this Midtown Manhattan office building.
Guys, from afar, it looks like you live in the wild, wild west. It looks really hectic in America.
Monday, after a gunman opened fire. Outside, others began CPR in the street. Police say just before 6:30 p.m., the shooter, seen here in surveillance footage, brazenly walked into the skyscraper at 345 Park Avenue with an M4-style rifle and started shooting.
The building's security camera footage shows the shooter enter the lobby, turn right, and immediately open fire on an NYPD officer.
Wow.
He then shoots a woman who took cover behind a pillar and proceeds through the lobby, spraying it with gunfire.
The NYPD commissioner said the gunman made his way to the elevator bank, shooting a security guard.
The shooter then calls the elevator, which opens in the lobby. A female exits that elevator, and he allows her to walk past him unharmed.
Police say he then went to the 33rd floor, home to the real estate company Rudin Management, where he killed one person before he shot himself in the chest.
I heard all these loud bangs.
This man, who didn't want to show his face, escaped the building when he heard the gunshots.
I came out 5 minutes later. One of my coworkers came out, and he said he saw 2 people get shot.
Others stayed inside and barricaded themselves in offices.
We believe this to be a lone shooter.
Police have identified the gunman as 27-year-old Shane Tamora. They say he had a documented history of mental health issues. He lived in Las Vegas and drove across country through Colorado Saturday night, then Nebraska and Iowa on Sunday, before reaching New Jersey Monday, about 2 hours before the shooting. Inside his black BMW, police found a revolver, multiple rounds of ammunition, and medication. The motive is still under investigation.
We lost 4 souls to another senseless act of gun violence.
One of the 4 victims was 36-year-old NYPD officer Didarul Islam, an immigrant from Bangladesh. Islam joined the NYPD in 2021. He had 2 young sons, and his wife is pregnant with their 3rd child.
He was doing the job that we asked him to do. He put himself in harm's way. He made the ultimate sacrifice. He died as he lived, a hero.
Shooting happening outside of Reno's largest casino. They say a total of 6 people were shot there after a gunman opened fire on a group of strangers.
See, that's a high earthquake, 8.8. I wonder what damage it's done.
At the valet stand of the Grand Sierra Resort. 3 people killed, 2 at that valet stand. A 3rd person was shot while driving in the parking lot. The gunman got into 2 separate shootouts with a security guard and then with police officers.
Oh my God.
I don't know how to process it yet.
I gotta go ask.
A desperate search for information as customers at Newbury Park's Side Street Cafe find out that co-owner Andrew Canepa is reportedly among the multiple victims shot outside the Grand Sierra Resort Casino in Reno.
Who's the guy?
Video here of the alleged gunman, who according to police fired at people outside the resort's valet area early in the morning.
The suspect's firearm malfunctioned. However, he was able to make it operable. Once operable, the suspect fired multiple times at the group of victims at valet.
Police say the gunman then ran through the parking lot, shooting at a security officer, then a driver in a vehicle, and Reno police, who fired back. They hit the suspect, who has been taken into custody.
In total, 6 victims were shot. 3 of them are now deceased. 2 remain in critical condition, and 1 was released.
Loved ones saying that at least 3 of those shot are from the area.
Everything in the park is like, hey, Bob, hey, whatever. It's like you always know somebody, and then something like this happens, and you don't expect it to happen to good people. It's hard to understand why stuff like that happens.
So this went on far too long. 5 suspects now face charges after that horrific street fight in Cincinnati over the weekend. More arrests, we're told, that could be coming as that video burns up social media.
Look at him, he's about 50 years old, And there's 5 of them giving him a flogging. Wow.
Now the Trump administration weighs in.
Ton of reaction to this viral brawl. The Trump administration's DOJ now suggesting hate crime charges could be coming. The Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, writing, quote, "Our federal hate crime laws apply to all Americans. We at Civil Rights will monitor closely how local authorities handle this attack. Nobody in our great nation should be the victim of such a crime, and where race is a motivation. Federal law may apply."
The first thing we need to understand is that there is only one race, the human race.
Amen.
Caucasians, Africans, Asians, Indians, Arabs, and
I don't judge you by your race, I judge you by your religion.
Jews are not different races. We are different ethnicities of the human race. All human beings have the same physical characteristics with minor variations. All human beings are equally created in the image and likeness of God, as we read in Genesis 1:26 and 27.
Good night,
Then
Bill. God
said,
bless, mate.
"Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God loved the world so much that he sent Jesus to lay down his life for us, as we read in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. The world obviously includes all ethnic groups. Jesus commands us to love one another as he loves us. John 13:34. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. Jesus.
JW's just gone live with the earthquake, guys.
Сначала с этой стороны зашкаливается.
All right, so we got some more clips, and what's happening now, like I said, everybody along the Ring of Fire is active as we speak, basically all the way through the West Coast. Let's look at these advisories right now, and then let's move on. So 8.7 hit off the East Coast, Kamachicha, Russia. There you go. 7:29, 4:24 p.m. was when it hit. And we got the whole West Coast now on alert as we speak. The Ring of Fire been peaking. We've been seeing a lot of activity with volcanoes. We have people watching on the ground. We've seen cracks coming. Let's look at another eyewitness account where the person is super close in Russia to the water section here. You can see right here, this is where off the coast it hit. And this was just probably about 20 minutes ago. These people were just sitting there looking at it off the beach. So they're seeing the waves slowly start to come up. And then we're going to go to Hawaii, because Hawaii is in the epicenter zone of what's going on right now. So let's look at the alerts right now for Hawaii, and then his eyewitness footage on the ground over there. Tsunami warning, you can see is valid right here. And basically all of these little areas, Hawaii, Honolulu, all of them, you got family in those locations. You need to tell them right away, make sure you move, because a lot of these people are actually already starting to evacuate. Let's show some of the sirens and stuff that's going on.
My footage.
So some of the people are actively trying to evacuate, and then some of them are just sitting on beach areas like nothing is absolutely happening at all. So People in the comments say scary sound. Yeah, the siren warning is always a shake to the psyche. This is happening currently as we speak in Hawaii Islands. And so if you have family, I don't know if you have family there, but if you do, please tell them right away that seek high ground. Now, over the course, how long is this going to happen? How long are we going to be seeing these monitoring alerts off the West Coast is the big question, as well as Hawaii. We're going to go into some more clips here in a second. Let's look at the actual alerts here. We got California, they got the alert, Washington, San Francisco, all these areas right here you can see is the zones we're looking at and monitoring. And some people are asking, is Florida going to be okay? Well, Florida is a little further off. I have not heard anything about Florida at all. So the Ring of Fire waking up, being more active is something that a lot of the geologists was talking about. And once we saw this hit at this 8.7, remember it was just last week where it was a 7 point something that hit along Russia. And this is the second one. So something is definitely underneath the Pacific blowing up. And that was a video I came out with based on the geological reports here that the slab detachment zones, let's get back to it. If you look at this map right here, the detachment scenarios, subscribe right now, as a matter of fact, you're really tuning in because we're really covering all this throughout the weekdays and trying to get these alerts out in a timely manner. And we're getting eyewitness footage on the ground for people in this chat as well. So these areas, apparently some of the plates was already having breaks. What happened is we had the ocean currents over here in these same locations that you're seeing right in the Pacific. Let's look down here, right in the North Pacific area. These same locations had the ocean heating up. We had a underground drilling process happening that we discovered a few weeks ago. And I can't remember the name of the company that went down there in the ocean, but we said we hope nothing gets further exacerbated if they go down there. Now let's look at an eyewitness account of this person who's in Hawaii right now when they first got the situation coming out. This person says, tsunami sirens in my sister's place in Maui supposedly hit in 3 to 4 hours caused by earthquake off Pacific Rim of Russia. Let's look at this clip right here. Right here.
Oh my God. Chewy, it's okay. Oh my God. Tsunami siren.
All right, a lot of people saying many of the buoys going off right now. What area are you in, Teresa, who's saying that buoys are going off at 8.8? Russia's been quaking over a week now. Yes, it has. It's been quaking. Wow. Let's go into something else here. So you can get the audio maybe on that footage here from Russia. So here's the audio on the footage from Russia. All right, if you're along the coast areas right now as you speak, are you getting any sirens? Let me know in the chat. Is any sirens in Oregon, any sirens in California, any activity of NOAA vehicles building up, anything you see currently right now? Drop it in the chat, drop your state, drop your location, because it's going to be important for us to go through these comments, see what's going on so that we can have a first line warning system. We'll try to update on this as much as possible. Now let's listen to a little bit of what Fox is saying outside of the reports that are already coming out, because we gave you these reports of the tsunami waves beginning to flood town in Russia. It's not like a huge one yet, but it's like a slow buildup is what's happening. And let's look at this effect. How long is this in? It says prepare. Okay, this is what it says in San Francisco area, y'all. So check this out. It says prepare to evacuate. This is NOAA. Prepare to evacuate regions if a tsunami warning is issued. Monitor local media NOAA weather radio. Now until further notice, this is in effect until, it says 12:15 a.m. on the 30th. So San Francisco, 12:40 a.m. on the 30th. This is going to be in effect until this time period, just so you know. Now moving a little bit further into the situation, let's listen to what they're saying here about some of the situations on Fox.
to kind of parse out how they were going to handle the watches and the warnings when it comes to the tsunami. Now, let's talk Hawaii. There's a live look at Hawaii, which, again, if there is a tsunami headed toward you guys,
Just want to point out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Previously, they didn't know if there was a tsunami, but the tsunami has been.
Doesn't the sea recede before the tsunami hits? The water hasn't receded, so I don't think there's a tsunami coming.
Confirmed now. Okay, via buoys or something like that? Yeah. Okay, so is there any information on the size of it?
No information.
Okay. But we do have confirmation that there is a tsunami that's occurring right now. It's out over water. And you would expect that with an 8.7 earthquake. I mean, you know, you have an earthquake that big, you're going to have a tsunami if it happens under the water. So this is a level up. So this is a...
All right, I want to go back to some of the eyewitness accounts because on the ground in Honolulu, Hawaii right now, you can see this person, OST Defender, put this out. Major traffic jams across Hawaii as residents and tourists alike attempt to flee coastal areas in preparation for the arrival of tsunami waves within 3 to 12 feet. Waves expected to arrive around 7 p.m. HST. I'm going to have a look at HST compared to us. But here's other things right here. I got some footage, or just you can see the imagery right here. If you look on screen of the area next to Russia, and you can kind of see how it's dark.
Oh, and I've heard that for years as well. California's going to break off. People have known that for a long time, haven't they?
The effect is coming in. This is the.
I wonder if it's going to be true.
Live cams. On top of that, we wanted to look into what is the other ones. Island has been upgraded to a tsunami warning. For some of the people just tuning in, though, we're going to let you see some more of what's happening throughout Hawaii right now.
I'd sit on the hill and watch it come in.
The ocean is that way. Guess I gotta get on the roof. I'm on the roof.
All right, so there's some of the eyewitnesses. They're saying that I'm in this live chat. Kim was the one who I was worried about because she has some cracks along her property. With the fault lines in America, we've seen activity increase, but Kim has just updated us. She says, I had an earthquake yesterday in Mount Pelier, Idaho. That's just up the road from me on Bear Lake. Okay, yeah, get back with us with the clip so we can find out what's going on with you in that location. As the Ring of Fire is very active right now, this is a potential cascading effect based on the information that's coming out. So along all the coastline areas, and these were the military drills and everything was done at, these areas are going to be really highly watched over the next couple of days because it's like a domino effect once we see a lot of this stuff happen. Not meaning that it's going to just all build up right away, but just saying that this is really the big scenario to prepare for. The U.S. military on starsandstripes.com, they were just training in July with the Japan military going along these areas because they already knew, they said it would be like at least 25,000 people potentially in these zones.
Italy's breaking up, according to Mike from around the world. There's a massive volcano sitting under Italy and it's about to blow up.
Literally just done out of existence. And at this point right now, I'm going to just listen to a little bit of this clip here. They're saying on CBS.
Oh, press the wrong button.
Moving home? Don't do it alone. Downsizing? No compromising. Need some space.
Some of these areas when the quakes hit, and that was in a previous video where we talked about it here. We said And you look right now in the chat, it says, watch next Mount Rainier quakes begin, strange sightings spread across America, because all the eyewitness accounts have been gathered and we've been doing this research. You will see all that information if you look right here on the left-hand side and click the video, or go in the live chat and click it.
Okay, he's hung up, guys. Has he? Yeah, he must have hung up, guys. I'm out. See you tomorrow, guys. God bless.